Wow, we got people already. Hello, everyone. Tonight is the evening of October 17th, 2021. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome for coming in. And uh, I've been kind of busy taking care of grandkids and things like that. But I thought I would take a few minutes. I've got them occupied doing some other things. So I thought I'd take some time here and go over a couple of issues that you may find interesting, you may not. Um, it's going to have, yeah, I know, it's healing, it's getting there. It's healing, it's getting there. A couple of things that I thought I should talk about, kind of on a political, military, and a spiritual basis as well. All of those, and you'll kind of see that, and I hope you'll kind of stick with me on this, and we'll try to have a little discussion, a little response back and forth in the chat here. Hello, Roosevelt. How you doing? Appreciate you being here. A couple of, actually, three things as far as kind of like announcements I'd like to make that are kind of important. The first one is that there is a thing called the Liberty Conference that's going to happen on the 22nd and 23rd of October. That's this Friday and Saturday in Salt Lake City at the Salt Palace. And apparently, I guess a lot of people are going to be speaking there. You can go to this web address, wecanact.net. Let me spell that out for you. Capital W, then a small e, capitals CAN, and then capital ACT. So it's wecanact.net. If you're interested in going, or if you want to see what's going on, you can go to that website and check it out. I guess everybody from General Flynn to just a bunch of people. I saw a list of maybe a dozen speakers that are going to be there. Again, it's this Friday and Saturday, the 22nd and 23rd of October at the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, Utah. No, I won't be there. I'm taking care of other things right now, and uh, I'm not going to be able to make it. So if you go there with the idea you're going to see me, you're not, and it's unfortunate. But I committed to these other things prior to this. I didn't even know this was going on. Um, just so everybody knows, as a matter of fact, I was asked apparently by Clay Clark to give out, if you know who he is. He didn't ask me personally. He asked a friend of mine who then got a hold of me and asked me to promote it. And people don't really understand that I'm not really the most popular guy in Utah. Liza Jean, hello. Yes, it's called a call to action, right, Liza Jean? Thank you very much. Hi, Walter. By the way, I tried tweeting you on Twitter, Walter, and it wouldn't go. It said can't send. And I didn't even realize that. I've had some DMs I've been sending you over the last month, I guess, and none of them got to you. So anyway, I just thought I'd let you know I wasn't ignoring you back whenever. So I don't know what's going on with Twitter there. Okay. All right. So they killed you. Oh, is that what it is? Oh, well, sorry about that. I know how that is. I got to be careful about what I say. So again, it's the Liberty Conference, a call to action found at wecanact.net, and it's for this Friday and Saturday in Salt Lake City. Unfortunately, I won't be there, but I'll be thinking about everybody that is going. Most people, you know how I feel about a lot of these folks, and I won't name any names, but the effort here is good, so that's a good thing. So I thought I'd make that announcement. Also, the La Palma volcano is getting really active. Kind and True Julianne keeps real close track of that. Bushcraft Bear on YouTube gives daily updates, as does BP Earthwatch Jesse. And things are getting pretty serious there. Uh, I'm not a geologist, as I said before, and I mentioned Jesse BP Earthwatch's explanation that it probably, even if the whole island sunk, it probably wouldn't cause a tsunami of any degree to hit the east coast of the U.S. But you just never know about these things. So just make sure that you're keeping your wits about you and watching that. You never know. Plus, volcanoes are acting up, especially along the rim of fire. and other places. So there are a lot of things that are going on. You just never know. So regardless, you should keep your situational awareness up. So I thought I'd mention that. Also, I wanted to mention that uh, there is a French journalist by the name of Guy, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. If he's watching this, I'm so sorry, sir. I should have asked you how to pronounce your name. It's Guy Boulianet, I think. Guy is his first name, Gui. His last name is Boulianet, Bulinne. And in the description box below, I have an article. He's put up several articles about these situations with the GMIs and the ingredients in them, the things that they're finding. Some of you have followed me over onto Odyssey. I've reported on that, along with Dr. Carrie Madej and Dr. Zalewski and some others. He's done several stories, and I've told the people on Twitter about it and on Gab, but I haven't posted it on YouTube in the community area because just the content and what it says would be a problem. So I'd just be wasting my time. But I am talking in a parable form here so that you'll know that you can go look at it in the description box. I don't think this one will cause a problem because it's in French. By the way, all of his articles are in French, so when you bring them up, you have to do a Google Translate, or sometimes you can use the little three dots on the top. You can check those, and there's usually a translate button there, or sometimes it'll appear at the bottom of your screen, and you can translate it to any language you want. Okay, of course English for most of us, but there are others I know that are on here that are watching this. So uh, I just thought I'd mention that. And this particular one by Mr. Boulianet, the reason why I decided to post this one is because he gives a little more background information on me. He has on the other articles that he's written, and I don't know how extensive his articles get distributed. I have no idea. Uh, can I contact you via email? Yes, Liza Jean, sure. As a matter of fact, I tried to do that with you once before. But I don't want to mention it here. Not that people couldn't find out what it is, but let's talk in DMs, or maybe some. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, change that right now. Um, the subject, because I just get some other things out of the way here. But thanks, Liza Jean. Yeah, I think I was trying to get a hold of you once before when some things happened, and I didn't have a way to do it because of that. So we definitely need that. So thank you. Okay. So anyway, this thing by Mr. Boulianet, he's put out several articles now about this whole thing with the health situation that's going on, the attacks on us, and those types of things. And the reason why I decided to put this one up in the description box is because, again, it is in French, which all of his things are. But this one is kind of interesting because he gives a little more background about me. Why I'm not putting it up there because I'm narcissistic or because I think it's neat. It's because I've been accused so many times of not talking about my background. And he talks about it on there, okay? And so I just figured, gee, I had to put that up for that. And he also gives information on the GMIs and all that other stuff too, the Tesla phoresis and all of these things. And you'll see what I'm talking about. But that's why I put it up there, because I'm constantly getting told, oh, I found these things about you and you've been trying to hide it. No, I haven't. I've been upfront about things for 40 years or longer. But I think some of the information there is pretty good, and you might find it interesting. He even bought a copy of my book, my autobiography. Can you believe it? I don't know how he found it because it's been out of print, but he found a copy of my autobiography that I had signed, that I had autographed. Well, I don't know how much he paid for it. I've seen those autographed copies of I Wed Three Wives go for as high as $300 on the internet for people who are, collectors. So I hope he didn't pay that for it. But if he did, that's really humbling to me that he would consider it to be that important of an information to do that. So at any rate, that's in the description box below, the link to that article of his, and then you can access his other articles too from there, okay, about this whole situation that we're undergoing right now. And by the way, he's very courageous to do what he's doing because he's from French Canada. So he's basically endangering himself to some extent from the Trudeau government, just so you know. He's brave enough to bring these things out, and that's very, very important. So I wanted to talk about that, and then let's see. I also wanted to talk about clergy response teams because that's going to be kind of where we're going to be today. I did not put a lot of information in the description box on that, but what I did do is I included an article from about 2007 where it discusses these clergy response teams so that you know I'm not just kidding you. So in the description box again is the Guy Bouillonnet article, which includes information about me. And number two is a link to an article by KSLA, I guess it's from Los Angeles, about the government, the Department of Homeland Security, initiating these clergy response teams, which are spying on you in church. Okay? All right. Uh, why did I include that? Because we're going to talk about something akin to that today. Okay, that's the reason why. So let me make sure I got all that here, so I don't forget anything here. Yeah, I got that. I got that. Uh, did I talk about Ted Cruz? Maybe I didn't. Uh, Ted Cruz was Senator Ted Cruz was in a um, press briefing with another senator on the situation at the border, and I'll be damned. He's standing there cucking himself to the world. He's got a face covering on, and it's like the flag of the state of Texas. You know, all of these politicians are just playing the game. They're coming after us. They're allowing us to be harassed, subdued, enslaved, and murdered. And I'm just, even Rand Paul, I'm just so sick of these people, I don't know what to do. Unbelievable. And then again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm putting this aside, this subject matter, because I'm not. It's just that unless there is a law enforcement group that will do something about it at the upper levels of the elites and the government officials, there's so little that we can do other than raise the alarm and try to take action if we see something happen. And that's the child and human trafficking that's still going on, right, across the world. It's the elites' currency system amongst each other, the way they blackmail each other, the way they blackmail government officials, etc. Thank you, Roosevelt, for putting that up there. Like I said, I was running out of time and space to put any links up, but yeah, that's true. So I've been very big on this whole thing with child trafficking and human trafficking. If you understood my background on some things, um, it has been something I've been involved with for a very long time, including back in the time period of the Franklin cover-up, which I've discussed before. I actually had a part in that investigation. So I've been involved in this real stuff, not things that are made up by others on the internet who want to just slam people or make up stuff like they're important. Okay, it is important. The thing is that they've closed down the government and the different law enforcement agencies. They'll go after a few of the small, lower hanging fruit and supposedly rescue kids every once in a while, although we never see any reports about it. I mean, real reports, parents discussing it or that kind of thing. I'm not sure that any of that is anything but placating us. But at any rate, uh, it's really hard to get the law enforcement agencies, especially the feds, to go on this, and you should know that. All right, and it's very disturbing. As a matter of fact, they talk about coming after parents at school board meetings. Why aren't they using the FBI resources to go after this child trafficking stuff? And they're not. I mean, it's very minuscule compared to the amount that's actually occurring. So I'm not ignoring it. It's just that the attacks there's so many attacks on us now from so many directions. As I've often said, it's a multi-pronged attack against us, right? In depth and full spectrum dominance, and so you almost have to, when you're in an airplane, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, I'd like to go and rescue all these kids and stop all these ending of births and that kind of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? Selling of organs and all that. Do it personally, but like when you're on an airplane and the airplane pressure drops, if you don't put that mask on yourself first, you're going to pass out. In other words, they just make it so that you have to take care of that objective before you can go after any others. And if you take those kinds of things on your hand, look at what's happened to people who have demonstrated or even tried to stop these types of things from happening, especially in certain clinics around the country. They're the ones that are declared the criminals. For instance, the people that broke the story about the selling of human tissue, especially fetal tissue, in California, and Kamala Harris, and then the Becerra, I think is his name, who is in the government now, in the federal government, was one of Biden's appointees for one of the secretary positions. Um, for some reason or other, I can't remember which one that is, but all those two people, Kamala Harris and this Becerra guy, went after the people that exposed these illegal selling of fetal tissue and stuff, and actually didn't didn't go after the culprits of the crime. They went after the people that exposed it. So the entire government is so corrupt that really all we can do is pull out of it at this point and try to protect our own. And they know that, and that's why they're so brazen. The entire security system, as I've often said, has nothing to do with protecting us. It has to do with protecting them. Okay? Yeah, I saw that, Liza Jean. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But I'm not going to go there tonight, but thank you for bringing it up. Okay, just so you know, I am concerned about that, but we have other things that are also happening, and you have to take care of what you can take care of. You know, a platoon can't take on an entire theater army. Okay, they just can't do it. You may watch the movie 300, where 300, Spartans hold a pass so that the Persians can't come through. But you saw what the end result was, right? All right. So it's just not what you think, and you have to go after what you can reasonably do. But I guarantee you that as far as saving children and all this, it is a priority. But there is nobody out there to help us. Just like there's no one out there to help us, not really, with trying to turn the tide on all these tyrannical things that are happening now. They're just warring against us all over, and it's not getting any better. We have a few wins here and there, which I won't go over, but I consider them more stopgaps than actual victories. And it's going to take something very, very serious, I'm afraid. Oh, well, that's cool. I didn't know you were on. Hi. Oh, that's good. Well, tell her hi for me and give her a hug, okay? Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Let me get into some of the other things that I think that are important that are going on right now. As you noticed, I've titled this "Traitors Are Basically Everywhere." Uh, you don't know who they are. You know, there's the InfraGard program from the FBI and the federal government and the DHS, where a neighbor of yours could be spying on you. I mean, it's really that bad. It's Stasi in East Germany and the secret police in Russia all over again in the United States, and it's really, really bad. And they're going to use it to our detriment, much more so in the very near future. And I think you can see that coming. You know about Biden's executive directive on domestic terrorism, etc. Uh, they're serious. They're actually doing this. And like I said, Ted Cruz is out there, cucking himself, and so is Rand Paul, and all the rest of them. And Trump will not come out and call back his OWS, which, as all of you know, that is a real barometer for me. To me, that tells me everything I need to know, that he is not trustworthy, and anybody that's trying to get behind him is either foolish or complicit. Okay? All right, so let's get into what I really wanted to talk about tonight, and it has to do with the churches actually becoming something that is dangerous to us. If you were listening to me a few nights ago, I did a video, and it was called, let me see if I can find it here on here. I thought I wrote it out somewhere on here. Um, Man, I was sure I did. Well, I guess I didn't. Okay, so I'll just talk about it. Sometimes I can't read my own handwriting, but that's not really the problem. Oh, it's right at the top. Jeez. You can tell this isn't scripted, right? You can tell it isn't scripted. This is basically a sequel to that, and it's the necessary sequence to liberty. It's a video I did about 2 or 3 videos back, and I believe I kept it on YouTube, so you don't have to jump over to Odyssey to see it, even though it's there as well. This is kind of a sequel to that, because I was very adamant in that you have to set your churches right, whether it's a community of like believers, or even trying to get people in authority positions in like the Mormon Church or even the Catholic Church. That you're going to have to demonstrate against them, demonstrate to them, actually act against them, to get them to change what they're doing. Because your governments are very much influenced by these very powerful organizations, whether you believe it or not. I think you heard me talk about that, right? Well, this is kind of following that, and it's really funny because it kind of happened. I was having a discussion. I think it was a couple of actually different people. Roosevelt, you were one, and then there was another one that I was having this conversation with too, which is kind of why I decided to come on here tonight and rehash some of this. I posted some of this on my community board on this channel. If you go into the top bar of my channel and go to the community tab and click on that, these things will come down and you can see what I'm going to talk about here as well. And there are other things there too, like some of Guy's stuff. Well, not on YouTube. That's on Gab. But at any rate, okay. Isn't this terrible that you have to be careful about what you say? But you know, Jesus did too. Jesus had to talk in parables. He was in a time very similar to ours, where he had to talk in parables, so only those who could hear would understand, right? And that's really where we are now, trying to hide this from the AI and from the live people that are out there trying to monitor what we're doing and surveil us. It's the same thing. It's the same system. The same subversion of our rights that has been going on for thousands of years. Even the ancient prophets, when you understand prophetic method, which I've talked about several times, it's veiled and it has different levels of meaning, right? I've talked about the pardes, the different levels of meaning in the scriptures, and it's not just the storyline or the literal meaning or the allegorical. There's also a mystical meaning, and all of those things are important, and you have to learn to get to those. But at any rate, so it's just too bad that we can't talk plainly on here. I don't think we ever really could, but it's really really bad now, as you know. Franklin Graham got caught with his pants down. Are you talking about seriously? You mean like Jimmy Swaggart? Was that his name? Jimmy Swaggart? The guy, wasn't that his name? Is that what you're talking about? Gavin Hillbold? Is that what's happened? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about that, but this is going to kind of impact on all. Franklin Graham's not trustworthy either. Okay, just to be honest about it. So here we are. This is what I'm going to talk about here are the cedars of Lebanon, and you'll go, "What? What? I thought you were going to talk about churches and political intrigue." And yeah, yeah, it is. So let me give you a little background so that you understand. In the Hebrew scriptures and even somewhat in the New Testament, when they discuss trees, and one of those that are the most common that you read about are the cedars of Lebanon. You see that all the time in the Old Testament. Whenever you see a parable or a story or a verse talking about trees, the real meaning of that is men. They're talking about a man, a person, when they talk about trees, or a group of men. The cedars of Lebanon, for instance, in the Hebraic method of telling their tales, their stories, their scripture, the cedars of Lebanon are the priests. The base word, the root word for Lebanon is Laban, and what it means is white. Okay? Cedar trees, I guess, in Lebanon, or they have, I guess, a white bark or whatever. But the real meaning of it is the white linen robes, clothing that the priests wore. So when it says cedars of Lebanon, It's actually talking about priests, and it goes beyond that in our current culture. But that's what it means. So, cedars of Lebanon are the priests in ancient Hebraic uh, understanding in Scripture, okay? Before we get to what that ties into as far as the clergy not being trustworthy today, by and large, and there's a lot of this, some intentional, much of it not. Some of it is unintentional, most of it, I think, is intentional. Let me put it that way. But let me go back to Genesis, because this is where we get our first look at the idea of the trees. And this is going to upset a few Christians and some of the, scriptural literalists and all that. But going along with what I just said, there were two trees in the Garden of Eden, basically, right? That were of some special value. There were other trees, just like there are many people today. So there were a lot of people even then. All right. But there were two trees that were of some specific importance: the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Right. And Adam was encouraged, and then later his wife Eve as well, to eat of every tree of the garden, including the tree of life, but not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. What that was saying is, and we're just going to talk about those two trees, but remember, they could eat of any of the trees except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? What was that? Well, the tree of life, for our purposes here, is God, or Christians would like to say it's Jesus Christ, and that's fine. It works. Okay, I can argue with that. All right, that's God. That's God's word. The tree of life is God's word. It's God Himself. Okay, it's God Himself. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is what would be considered in, for instance, Job, Shaitan, Satan. When he it comes up to the throne in Job, and God says, "Well, what have you been up to?" and so he says, "Well, I've been wandering around the earth, testing your kids, to see what they're going to do." He's the Tet. He's the number 9 in the Hebrew uh, um, alphabet, the Tet, which is also the number 9. He's the instructor. He's the tempter. He's the accuser. He's the tempter is not even the right word. It's tester. In the Lord's Prayer, when it says, "Lead us not into temptation," the actual word should be, "Don't test us too hard." Asking God not to test you too hard. So the actual word is test. So, in other words, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was Shaitan. And God said, "Don't eat of it, because if you do, you'll die." He didn't say when you'll die. He just said you'll die. Well, of course, we know that death, the real purpose, the real definition of death is separation from God, right? That's really what it means. Okay? So if you pay attention to this tester, and you fall for his temptations, his tests, rather than sticking with the tree of life, which is God and His Word, you're going to fall. You're going to sin. You're going to fall short of the mark. You're going to leave God's presence. That's what it was. That's really all it was. Now, there was another aspect to this that I've talked about before, because people are going to say, "Well, what about the serpent? Who's the serpent?" Well, okay, we have the discussion. Remember, that tree was there long before the serpent showed up, right? So the serpent shows up, and there are different theories about what that is, and I'm not going to get into all of those, but I'm going to talk about one of them, and just so that you know, this is just one aspect of this serpent. It apparently was a fallen angel. It apparently was either Azazel, some people would say, or one of the leaders of the fallen angels, who then, with this temptation that occurred, just using that principle, right, had Eve get deceived. And I've talked about what that deception was, and yes, it does have to do with reproduction. Not that sex is evil or sinful, no, but there was something that was said there, which is very prominent, by the way, today in secret societies, about using sex as a means to obtain spiritual enlightenment. Sex really is that way, but it was meant to be between a husband and wife so that they can move together as a unit. Uh, a lot of people will say that sex outside of marriage is adultery. It's not. That's not what it means unless the woman is married, and that was by biblical Hebraic definition. So if a married woman has sex outside of marriage, then she's committing adultery, and also the guy that's with her is committing adultery. And so when Jesus said you can't look at a woman and lust after her, because then you're committing adultery in your heart, he was saying that you're making moves to take a man's wife from him. You're engaging in covetousness and theft, okay, which is destroying someone's life. It's almost a murder. But there were other scriptures in there, and I'm going to show you that the reason why I'm saying that the sex between Adam and Eve was not the problem. I think that's important because a lot of people think that's what it was. It wasn't. They were together. They were given to each other. And there's a much bigger picture than this than I can get into here. Just remember, there were a lot of trees in the garden. All the trees you can eat of, but you can't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so there are a lot of these trees that you could pick from. Put it that way. All right. Well, the situation is that in Leviticus, it talks about if a man and a woman are lying together, and of course a man with a man is considered abomination, and certain bad things happen at that. But it gives information about if a man and a woman lies together, and there's some question in the Hebrew because wife and woman can often be the same term. But when you look at the circumstances surrounding this verse in Leviticus, and I'm not going to give it to you now. I'm just giving you some quick background. It's not quick at all, but you'll see what I'm talking about here. It says that when a man lies with a woman, and that well, first of all, it says if a man is at night and he has basically an accidental emission, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? That he is to take off his clothes, to wash them, and to bathe himself, and he's unclean until evening. That's all there is to it. It's a hygienic thing. Because if it were a sin, he would have been told to take something like the turtle dove or some other animal for a sin offering to the priest. And that's not the requirement in there. It doesn't say that. So there's no sin in that. It's hygiene. That's all it is. Because you'd have to understand where the Israelites came from. They had been in this terrible bondage and filth for 400 years, supposedly, right? Just as an example. Okay. So it goes on and then it says something else. It says if a man lies with a woman and his seed leaves him, both he and the woman need to take off their clothes, wash them, and bathe, and they're both unclean until evening. Again, it's a hygienic thing. It doesn't say that they've committed sin. If they had, they would have been commanded to make a sin offering and take it to the priest, and that was not the issue. So there was no sin there. You could ask, well, is it fornication? Were they unmarried? Well, it certainly wasn't adultery, or God would have said that it was. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the particulars of that because it'll upset some people. I've talked about the marriage things in Israel before, things about concubines, things about relationships for specific contracts for specific amounts of time. And no, it's not prostitution. That's for money, okay? That kind of a thing. It's not like that. That story is like Judah and Tamar, if you read that, and she wasn't that either. She was trying to show that Judah wasn't treating her right, but and then she bore Pharez and Sarah, who Pharez was the progenitor of Jesus, that line. But at any rate, so with all that background, all right, trees are men. Okay, that's what we're talking about, and I did all of that to kind of show you and to give you kind of a glimpse into the situation with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, okay, which Roosevelt has asked me to cover. That's just a little snippet of information there for you, Roosevelt. We'll get some more later, specifically that relationship between Adam and Eve later, okay, just not tonight because of this. Okay, another example of a tree. When you do your genealogy, what do they call it? They call it They could call it a genealogy diagram, but they also call it a what? A genealogical tree. All right. So there you have another example. There are people here on a genealogical tree. So it was brought down even into our current vernacular about genealogical trees. So there's another, at least current tie-in, that trees, when they're talking about that, especially the cedars of Lebanon, we're going to talk about specific men, the priests. Okay. All right. So here about a few days ago, someone put up a video on Twitter. I think it's a Catholic priest. It could be an Anglican priest. I'm really not sure. It's one of those that are very very ritualistic. I think though it was a Catholic priest. And this isn't a slam on Catholics. This is a slam on this particular priest. Okay. He was telling people that it was God, basically that it was proper for them to do the GMI because it was God's will. That's basically what he was saying. All right. Which goes along with what the Pope has said and what the president of the Mormon Church, the prophet, seer, and revelator, so called, of the Mormon Church, and the Pope, so called, of the Catholics, and a lot of these other leaders of these institutionalized organizational religions have said, right? Franklin Graham has said it, and there are lots of others, okay? And I'm not going to name them all right? But you all know that that's been going on. That's because they are traitors to God. I'd like to say they don't understand, that maybe they're a little ignorant of the truth, but I don't believe that because it's pretty plain. When you, even at my level, with the study that I've done, these guys have been through their seminaries, and I know they can be taught certain things and directed to think certain ways, but this is something in the heart that divides you. Okay, this is one of those division things that God said He was going to use to divide His people into sheep and goats, into tares and wheat. Okay, this is an internal thing of discernment, and it divides out the chaff from the wheat, the evil-hearted ones from God's elect. And we just have to embrace this separation, as painful as it is. And that goes along with what's happening in the country as well. So anyway, he said this, and a lot of people got upset, and rightly so. Rightly so. So I got kind of interested in responding to it, so I put up a tweet. If any of you have Twitter, you can go to my Twitter line and you'll see my response to this. And basically, I said, I explained that the Cedars of Lebanon is talking about the priests, which in our day would go not just to priests, but to ministers, pastors, and those claiming to be shepherds of the Lord's flock. Just in general terms, that's what a cedar of Lebanon would be. Okay? And this is where the clergy response teams that I talked about in the beginning are so important. Thank you, Roosevelt, for putting that up. This is where the clergy response teams comes in, because they're showing that their God is the government, not the God of heaven. That they're not shepherds over their flocks that they've been given stewardship of, which means you. They're doing the will of a false god. And I'm going to read you Isaiah to show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 2. And this is where the scriptural stuff comes in. But believe me, everybody, even those who don't like the scriptural stuff, you're going to see how this hangs with what we're talking about politically, what's going on in our country today and in the world. So we're going to go to chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 12 and 13. And you'll pardon me if I put these on. Okay. Okay, let's read this and see what it says. So it's Isaiah chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. This is what it says. And it's talking all about these men who are, well, you know what? I think I'll read more than that. I think I'll read more than that, because this is our day. Chapter 2 is our day. Okay? And I read a little of this the other day. Okay, but let's read some of it again. The word of the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem, and it shall come to pass in the last days. Right? And then if you read down through chapter 2 there, you'll see all these things that are going on there. And I talked about this the other day, so I won't read the whole thing, all right? but it talks about there's no end to their chariots. Look at all the vehicles we have today everywhere. Okay, so there's no end to their chariots, and the land is full of gold, and the land is full of idols, right? And the people bow down to these idols that they've made with their own hands, right? All of that, and it's talking about our day. And they talk about entering under the rocks for their protection because they see the glory of the Lord coming. In other words, His vengeance, right? All these different things. But let's read verses 12 and 13 now, talking about the cedars of Lebanon. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty, and upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. Verse 13, and upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan. The cedars of Lebanon is code, Hebraic code for priests. They're a tree, because they're a man, right? Trees and men are equivalent in the prophetic method. Lebanon is based on the Hebrew root Laban, which means white. And the priests wore white linen. Hi, Felicia, how you doing? How you doing? Glad you're here. So Isaiah is saying in verses 12 and 13 that he's coming after these priests that are, and these ministers and these pastors that are high and lifted up, and they're not even worshiping him, they're worshiping another god, pretending to be something they're not. Now, along those same lines, let's go to 1 Peter 4:17, okay? Because this is where that's nailed, okay? 1 Peter, and yeah, I know. People say, well, Roy, you don't like the New Testament. Well, it depends on who I'm reading. I do have a problem with Paul, but I don't really have a problem with the epistle to the Hebrews, because I really don't think that Paul had much to do with that. I don't think that he had much to do with 1st and 2nd Peter. He certainly didn't have anything to do with James, the epistle of James. But let's read this. Again, it's 1 Peter chapter 4, 17. And I can tell you historically why I have some respect for the epistles of Peter, but that's really not important right now. Let's read 4:17. Okay, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17. For the time is come that judgment must begin where? With the heathen, with the Russians, with the Chinese, or even with the politicians? No. And this is why I said you have to get your churches in order. Verse 17, for the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. Those who are the believers. Those who profess to be the believers, like the cedars of Lebanon that Isaiah was just calling to account. The judgments do begin in the house of God. That's why they're coming for the Christians. That's why the Christians are in trouble. And they're following false leaders in these churches, like I just pointed out in that priest talking about, and the Pope and the president of the Mormon Church, etc., telling you to bow down and get this jab. And a lot of the other things, that I could go into that I'm not going to tonight. But anytime they put government before God, because Romans 13 doesn't say that you have to obey every form of government regardless. It says only those that are righteous, that are going after the evil ones, right? That are bringing fear to the evil ones, not to people in general. Not everything that they put out. If that were the case, then Daniel would have gone ahead and bowed down to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. He wouldn't have prayed, and Jesus wouldn't have been crucified. So let's see what it says here. So let's just look at Romans chapter 13 again. These priests that tell you, again, these cedars of Lebanon that Isaiah is calling to account and telling them that they're going to be judged for their falsehoods and their lies and leading the flocks astray, and that the judgments of God would start in his house, as I just read in 1 Peter. Let's see really what Romans 13 says. Yeah, it says governments instituted by God for men's welfare, and we should follow along, right? Under these circumstances. Let's read it. Verse 3. Actually, I'm going to start over because this can go both ways. Let's go in verse 2. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. In other words, under what circumstances? And this is in verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. So when rulers are going after the evil, we're to sustain them. Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise for the same. For this ruler that goes after evil, not oppresses the poor. You can read Isaiah where it says, don't oppress the poor, don't oppress the fatherless and the widows, don't steal, don't murder, don't start unnecessary wars. And certainly don't set up the government as an idol to worship, because that's idolatry, which is one of the commandments we're not supposed to, right, violate. For the good government, that's what it's talking about here, one that goes after evil, is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. And that would be the situation if the government wants you to do something that's evil, then it's not a legitimate government. Now, there's another aspect of this thing in Romans that I've talked about before, and I discussed it in my Eisenman series, and that is that Paul was a tool for the Romans and the Herodians who had been put into power by the Romans. I know a lot of Christians don't want to hear that, but the Romans were very picky about what ended up in the scriptures, and especially during the Messianic revolt of that first century time period. And so if Paul had written anything else, if he had actually said, stand against the evil government, he wouldn't have been doing the Romans the job that he was hired to do. And I know a lot of Christians don't want to hear that, but that's just the fact of the matter. So he was placating the Romans, their evil system. Do you really think God would want you to sustain a government like the Roman Empire that was slaughtering people for spitting on sidewalks, literally, and putting people innocent people into gladiator fights where they were slain, slaughtered, cut up, fed to the lions? You really think God would want? Is that a good government? Romans 13 is talking about a good government that goes after evil, not one that promotes evil. So, what we have here is a situation today where the churches have become the traitors to God and to you if they tell you to do the things that they're telling you to do, to obey the government over God. And remember, the First Amendment was put in there that the government, that Congress can make no law establishing or respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which means that they're duty bound to protect you, not to interpret whether your religion is genuine or not, but to protect you in the exercise of your conscience, of your religion, against all comers. And that includes corporations that are working in hand with the government, or anybody else for that matter. So we're in dire straits, ladies and gentlemen. As I said the other day, all of our support networks have been taken from us. The government's not protecting us in our rights or from these assaults that are coming. We're in a war. We're in a real war right now. It's gone kinetic. It's just not one that we're familiar with. We're not seeing tanks and guns, not saying it won't go there. But they've attacked us on our lines of communication, our supply lines, our relationships. Then they've told us that we have to do this procedure now against our will, which actually is a violation of almost every law I can think of. It's an assault. And just because government does it doesn't make it legitimate. I saw that Roosevelt had to say no biblical argument in the chats. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, the chat's not the place to argue. As people get, I've had to block several people on Twitter this last week. And I've gotten so I enjoy it actually because I've explained to people that I'm not going to write a doctoral dissertation on the Twitter threads. I'm just not going to do it. If you want to see where I stand on issues, go to my religion series, go to my Eisenman series in the playlists above. You go up there and click on playlist. Then you can go down to religion series or the Eisenman series, and you'll get it. But I usually talk about these things. I usually bring them in one way or another in a lot of videos anyway. Okay, so yeah, chat's not a place to argue because most people that are demanding that you see it their way, and I'm not telling you need to see it my way. I'm telling you to go check it for yourself. There's some things I'm adamant about, and the one thing I am adamant about is that there are Christians out there that have never heard the name Jesus Christ because they have his law already in them. They have his name in them because they have his attributes, and they may never have heard of his name. That's not his name anyway, but just for the sake of what we're discussing here. So that's all I have. Beware of the cedars of Lebanon. Beware of the shepherds who are actually wolves in sheep's clothing. They're everywhere now. I'm going to name a couple of them again. Franklin Graham, the president of the Mormon Church, the 12 apostles of the Mormon Church, the first presidency of the Mormon Church, and all those who support them. The Pope, all the cardinals, all those who are saying that you have to obey the government in this thing and violate the temple of your body, which is the temple of the Spirit of God, that he has given you, not them. They can rule over administrations, operations, and they can protect you, as Romans 13 explicitly defines, against evil. But when they perpetrate evil, you are not under any obligation as a matter of to follow them, to obey them, and even more so, you are duty bound not to obey them. Yeah, there are a lot of, as Roosevelt's pointed out, there are a lot of, I never thought the witnesses would go for it. They won't even get blood transfusions, which I agree with, by the way. but they won't get that, and yet they're going to take this thing? The hypocrisy. You can see where the devil, and I'm just using that as for the point of the conversation, where the just like Isaiah said, the powerful, the mean men of the earth are bowing down to this thing and doing its bidding. The prideful, those who think they're something, as Monty says, those who think they're somebody, right? They're bowing down to this evil, and then they're trying to force it on you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a war. It's spiritual, yes, but it's also physical. So that's my presentation for the evening. Okay. Loyalty to nobody but God. Well, but God will also expect you to be loyal to your family. There are people that say that they don't feel like they want to, do things for, work anymore or anything like that, and I can understand that. But God does want you to take care of those close to you. He wants you to be loyal to your family and your friends, unless they turn their back on you, and then let that be on them, not on you. Pardon me a minute. I've got my, and it's just water. Okay, I'm not going to talk to you about these things when I have, a little bit of liquid courage in me. Okay. Having covered those subjects, is there anything anybody would like to bring up? I mean, I know the world's crazy right now. Does anybody want to talk about? Oh, let me see this. Yeah. Oh, Roosevelt. Yeah. And there are all kinds of things like that. You know about a lot of the Islamic people. They'll recite it in Arabic, the Quran, and they don't know what it says either. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. Janine I don't Congelier. I'm sorry, I can't say your name. I don't know how you pronounce it. I know. A lot of us are alone. Janine, I know. It's happening. I mean, I've had friends, and I don't want to give any details, but I've had, right when things started getting rough, they've made all these promises all these years. And right when things come to the critical moment, they decided they didn't want to do it. Under some other excuse, of course, they won't say that. Um, I've had family members do the same thing. One of my dreams was, and that's why I liked putting Guy Bouillonet's thing. He probably pronounces it Bouillonnet, I think. Bouillonnet is probably how he pronounces it. Um, because I don't like to bring these things up, not because I'm embarrassed by them, but because they're complicated, you know? And I get to discussing it. Look how they're destroying families now, the relationship between men and women, taking children from their parents, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the drag queen story time, all of the things that are happening. I had this vision in my mind of what a family um, based upon solid ground could do to support itself, a self-supporting system. And that's how it worked hundreds of years ago, even 100 years ago, 60 years ago. But it's all been changed now. Most people don't even have a garden in their yard, and they certainly don't have the kids working in the garden with them. So I had this vision of this family thing and how it would be. And a lot of them have turned on me, Janine, and I'm sorry. That's one of the painful things we go through, is to find out that we're alone. And I know people, and I won't name them, of course, but I know a lot of people in our little community here that have had similar things happen to them, especially with this latest development. And the government and the churches and the medical people and all, the corporations are trying to divide us from our loved ones over this issue, because that's how they destroy us, dividing us, keeping us alone, breaking up our relationships, taking away our support groups, taking away our means to survive, to support ourselves, even attacking our belief system. This is a full-on war. And shame on Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, uh, Trump, uh, uh, all the supposed great leaders that are standing up against Biden. Don't kid yourself. I know Biden's evil and his whole system that backs him up. I know that. The DOD is one of our biggest enemies today. I even warned about it on Twitter today. I said the DOD is now dangerous to Americans, extremely dangerous to us. They think people like Millie think that they're going to be the ones that are going to take over these areas when the country's divided up, and he's going to get a little section to be a king over. That's what they've been promised, ladies and gentlemen. Are they going to get it? No, because the evil forces that have made these agreements with them aren't going to follow through. Millie's evil. Austin is evil. Biden is evil. Psaki is evil. Buttigieg is evil, or whatever the hell his name is. you know, they're all evil. Kamala Harris, the Clintons. And because of the fact that they will not stand up and say it to protect your life and the life of your loved ones, I throw Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and all of those same kind of people in there as well. Because silence is agreement. Silence is a sign of complicity. There is a time, right, where you have to be as wise as a serpent, as harmless as a dove. Unfortunately, right now, what they're doing is they're acting as accessories to some of the most horrible crimes that humanity has ever seen. And I will not excuse them for that. And I'm very upset with those who think that they have to rub shoulders with them and stroke them because they're their only hope for turning the country around. There is no more hope. It's done. We have to separate out and embrace that, however you can accomplish it. So you're going to be alone for at least a little while longer, Janine. Hopefully not the rest of your life, but I understand exactly where you are. Okay. Let's see. I like that, Roosevelt. Roosevelt says, I have learned that believing I'm alone is Satan's test. We are never alone. We have God. Well, that's true, Roosevelt. But I'll be honest with you, okay? And I've talked to God about this. I mean, he hasn't talked to me. Well, actually, he kind of did once. But God is no replacement for a mate. I'm sorry. That's false. And I'm not saying you think that. I'm not saying that. But there are Christians that I've talked to that basically say that. And I disagree with that 100%. The loneliness that you feel because you don't have another human, especially one of the opposite sex, to be close to you and to love you and to embrace you and to be a companion and a partner and a lover and all that, God can't give you that. He won't give you that. He'll give you that mate, but he's not that person. And he will not substitute no matter how close you are to God, that's not gonna work to substitute for your true love, your mate. You're I'm not saying you have to have your soulmate, but that kind of thing. And I can prove that to you. We go right back to Genesis again. We know that when Adam was brought into the Garden of Eden, he walked and talked with God. He was with God in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life. All right, it's there. God was there. And proof of that is when they do fall and Adam and Eve go hide themselves, and then the Spirit of the Lord was coming through the garden, right? And he comes up and he talks to Adam. Even at that point, after the fall, because Adam hadn't really truly fallen yet, he was able to talk to God because Adam didn't get the cursing. Eve did. The earth was cursed for Adam's sake, right? So God was there. Yet, what did God tell his other angels, his other Elohim? He said, "Is it good? I'm with Adam. I see him every day. I talk to him. I'm in the garden with him. I'm the tree of life. But Adam's alone. Well, let's bring him animals. Let's have all these other things." And no, Adam needed a woman, and the woman needed Adam. One of the good things that Paul did say, I think it's in Galatians, I could be wrong. Somebody can check me on that. It doesn't matter. I can remember the scriptures. I sometimes can't remember the exact citation. But he said, neither is the man without the woman, nor the woman without the man. And then he made a clarification, of course, he said, in the Lord. So when the Lord puts those things together, whatever God has put together, let no man pull asunder. Okay? That's an unbreakable, important bond. And even God doesn't claim to be the replacement for that. Now that puts a lot of us in, because we're so sorrowful, we're so lonely that we want that connection with another person, but we then say, okay, well, I'll just have my relationship with God, and that's fine. That's fine. But if God brings you someone that's a possibility, don't turn it away because you say, well, I've got God now, I don't need you. Because that's not how it works. Other people will bring up, well, in Revelations it says that the 144,000 are those who were not defiled with women, right? And we've talked about that before. And the bottom line on that is that That's the number of the men. 144,000 is the number of the men. And those who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. There is no such thing as a male who's a virgin. And I talked about that. I know there's another citation that talks about that very similarly in, I think that's in Galatians too. I'm not sure. It might be in Corinthians. But at any rate, uh, the word that was used is misunderstood. It's mistranslated because in the Old Testament it's very clear: a virgin's a woman who has not borne a child. So what Revelations is really talking about is not that those men are celibate. That's not what it's saying. Never had a woman. That's not what it's saying. It was saying that the women were not damaged goods that were with them. That's a Hebrew. That's a Jewish saying. A woman who's damaged goods is someone who's not, didn't get married before the thing, right? So in other words, what it's saying is they're priests, because priests can't marry prostitutes. A priest that marries a prostitute prostitutes himself, and Paul talks about that as well, joining the body to a prostitute. Then, right? But it's talking specifically about those who become priests, and that their women have to be pure. That's what it was saying. The women are virgins, not the men. The word for a male virgin is nukios, right? Okay, not parthenos. That's feminine. That's supposed to be for the woman. And then again, the word for virgin, Bethula, in Hebrew, is definitely talking about a woman. That's never applied to a man. Boy, how did I get off on that? Anyway, for those of us who are alone, I lost my wife, many years ago. I tried dating a few times. Things haven't worked out. But we're not supposed to be alone. We have that feeling in us of wanting a companion for a reason, because God put it there, because He knows. All right? So don't feel bad about that. But ask God for help to find that person. And we may or may not. In my situation, I think it's been the kind of thing where I've been placed here probably because of some of the errors that I made previously. That's probably one reason. I always consider that. But probably another reason is because Carol told me something once, and she's absolutely right, actually. She said to me, she's the one I put that up the other day. I mentioned it in a video, and then somebody made a meme about it where it says, yeah, where you can't apply logic to a situation that has none, and so that's been plastered all over now. Well, there's another thing that she said to me, which I won't make a meme out of, but there's some truth to it. She said a woman is a distraction to a man. That's what she said. And you're supposed to be. Okay, a woman has to have that in her to be able to distract a man. I mean, that's what she does. However, that's only partially what she does. She's also an inspiration. And I told Carol that. I said, look, a woman is both an inspiration when she needs to be, and a distraction when she needs to be. Okay. And I thoroughly believe that. She read a book, Tony Clark, I think was her name, The Ultimate Woman or something like that. And she said a woman needs to be a mother, a cook, a businesswoman, and a courtesan. And I believe that too. I believe that too. Yeah, blood banks are contaminated. I know. This whole thing is so messed up now. It's all messed up. Oh, this is an interesting one. I don't think I've ever covered this before. Nana52 says, do you have any opinions about near-death experiences? Yeah. I have friends, personal friends, that have had those. I can't say that one of my experiences that I've had was due to, an actual death. I don't know if that were the case. But I had a communication. Yeah. And at one time I actually saw something, but yeah, I'm aware of people that they've been they've died from heart attacks, accidents, whatever, and they've gone through different experiences because it's just like the story about three blind men that are feeling an elephant. One says, well, it feels like a rope. One says it feels like a tree trunk. Another one says, well, it feels like whatever, the side of a ship or whatever. Your perspective has a lot to do, both your past perspective and experiences, and what you're bringing to the experience at that point in time. And so a lot of different people have a lot of different experiences, and a lot of that's just the way that God communicates with us, because you transition from here to the other side, whether for a short time like in an NDE or permanently. It's still an adjustment, and some people accept it, some don't, and so that causes some problems. But I do believe that NDEs occur, and I've had waking experiences, and I have family and friends that have had waking experiences of contacts, not conjuring up spirits, which is forbidden. No, not doing what Saul did with the witch of Endor, calling up Saul. I'm not, or doing Ouija boards or things like that. I'm talking about where God says, "Yeah, be a ministering angel, go and comfort them." Yeah, I've had that. So I do believe that NDEs are true. Yeah, and sometimes it's done so that we have um, a witness that this isn't all there is, and that's to be a comfort to us. Oh, Fucus, you all are my true family. That's a wonderful thing to say, and I feel the same way by and large. Even with the trolls sometimes, because I figure sometimes they're just victims or just ignorant, or maybe they really are bots. Okay. Well, we've been going for an hour and 12 minutes now, and I didn't answer a lot of questions. Nana 52. Okay, I guess you don't. Thank you anyway. I answered you now, Nana 52. Just know, okay, these chat things go by me real fast. That doesn't, I don't see but maybe 1% of them. So don't, everybody, understand this, okay? These chat things go by, and while I'm talking, I'm not reading because I can't talk and read at the same time and make sense. Some people say you don't make sense anyway, right? But don't get upset, Nana 52. I did now answer you. But everybody else on here too, understand I can't get to all of your questions, and you shouldn't get upset if I don't address you. I'm not ignoring you. It's just the volume that's on here. Okay, Nana 52. I expect to see an apology from you too. Okay, because I don't do that on purpose. Yeah, a lot of us are losing our jobs. What is this? Hound jog. That's an interesting one. Yeah, I know. I know. And this is all designed to destroy us. Look what they're doing. They're firing people like cops, nurses, doctors, whatever, right? Because we've got this terrible thing going on, and we can't have people around here who aren't jabbed, right? And then what do? They bring in people that aren't. National Guard, FEMA personnel, right? Who've all been exempted. How can you? And if this thing is so bad, how can you exempt anybody? Well, I'm not saying that it should be forced on anybody. I'm saying they're trying to force it on some and saying others can be exempted. How does that make any sense? Because it's a takeover, it's a war. They're cutting our lines of communication, they're destroying our economy, they're taking down our supply lines. That's why. So, yes, please pray for Hound Jog and her husband, and all of us actually, okay? Yeah, bootleg. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, do some bootlegging and, midnight. However they talk about that. Wow, there's a lot of see. Nana 52. I'm scrolling down through here. There must be 100 comments in the chat, and I got to what? Maybe 5 of them. Maybe 10 of them. So I don't do it on purpose. Wow, I'm still not at the bottom. Oh, I finally got there. Okay. Okay. I think we're done. I think we've gotten a little bit done tonight. I know everything's happening now. Everything's coming down. I see people arguing on whether the GMI is the mark of the beast or not. And they have all the, well, look, and I'm just going to say it this way, it's the system, okay? And if you can't see the seal of God in somebody's forehead, because that's not how it works, it's by their fruits you'll know them, and only God and the angels can see what's in your heart. It's not a visible seal when God does this. And it's the same with the devil's mark. It doesn't necessarily have to be visible. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to argue about what the mark of the beast is. My take on it at this point is we are in the system of it, and they are doing it. We can't buy or sell without obeying certain things at this point. And they have to do with our body, our temple. And if that ain't it, I don't know what is. Yes, cry out to God. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll talk again in a few days. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. Right? Keep your situational awareness on high. Things are getting dicey again. I see Gretchen Smith, who's on Twitter. I think she has a website too, but I don't go there. She's a Code of Vets. She helps vets who are, in different straits of sorts. She has a great organization. And her husband is vice president in a supply line company. She says it's happening. So all those things I said 3 months ago about the military, the field grade officers saying get your houses in order, boom, here, pardon me, here we are. And they're throwing the good people out, even court-martialing some. Look what's happening to Lieutenant Colonel Scheller, just for saying that the upper command didn't do their job and they should be held accountable, which is right. And he didn't do things nearly as bad as what Milley, Kelly, Petraeus, Hayden, Clapper, McCraven did. All those guys. They're at war with us. They're at war with truth. They're at war with reason. They're at war with logic. And they want to kill you and your family. Yes, they do. On the other side, like I said, keep your wits about you. And even if you're not religious or spiritual, try to do the right thing in a situation, even if you're the only one to do it. And keep your heart open to the power of Father in heaven, because He is there. He is there. Talk to y'all later out here.